Yeah. I thought we
Thank you. Okay, we're at the stage where we have a listen to the objectives of the forum number, the here in person, and one that's online, I think. Gary Walker still showing on there. Oh yes, in the centre, that's it. Right, I'll ask that the no special order come forward, and if you could keep your contributions to under 10 minutes, that would be great. If you say Ian Craig. Are you familiar with the mic system? Okay.
Hi there, I'm Craig, I'm a representative of Albert Community Council here, and I'm going to keep it short and sweet. It's bullet points, I'm going to raise concerns for the community. These are basically the impact on education, both at primary level, secondary level, for Albert, because we do know that although we do we're not running out of capacity, that's not what we should be seeing. Secondly, there's an excess load on the health medical practice, which we're worried about if we're bringing these houses. Obviously, we want to have one pocket per house, have minimum 2, 3, or 4. The next one is the environmental impact on the local wildlife and the flora and fauna around about Alba, which is going to have a major impact on, because these are natural floodplains that we have in Alba, and we're worried about the fact that we've got a lot of wildlife and it is coming back. The next one is the excess load on the sewage plant and all the ancillary stuff that goes with that, because we do have problems with the sewage plant in Alba. As in having to pump extra sewage out of the road. The next one we have is the disruption to the roads, which are currently becoming stretched from acts and building work, and all the introduction of roundabouts on this road. We think we're going to have problems with it, because we've had some 3 or 4 serious accidents in the past 2 years on these roads. And finally, the last concern, and the obvious concern, is over flooding throughout the area of the development and neighbourhood properties, which haven't been negated as far as we can see. That's our Community Council point. So, I'd like to answer from that.
Do you like to pick that up?
I'll start. Giving that. Go through your points, the impact on education, by the vice got from education services and the vice the secondary school is not at capacity, so there's no issue to be resolved there. So what's in the report is basically what's the education. I don't know if you want to expand on the
No, our concern is around the primary school and not around the secondary school.
Which is simply healthcare. Did I pick that up correctly? I said that nothing's been raised by NHS. We've had something that were reminded. I'd had no comments from them. So that's the report reflects that. Wildlife, it's an open site, it's an allocated site, so clearly once you build on an allocated site, some of that habitat is going to go, but there's the houses on it. What you need to do is make sure that there's provision for wildlife accommodated in it, there's corridors through it, there's connections to it, there's potential species in the fences. So it's not going to be an open field once it's built out, but you need to accommodate wildlife corridors within that. And what's there is satisfactory, it's facilities, satisfactory. Its impact on the sewage plant, I don't know whether you look at that, there's been nothing been raised during the course of the application to suggest that the infrastructure can accommodate the proposed development. The sort of the roads, transportation will advise it in that regard. The proposal is acceptable. You put about the roundabout, that in effect that would serve to slow traffic. So there could be an improvement to traffic movement there, because it will slow traffic entering Alva from the west, and further we'll be discussing that at length. Okay. Thank you.
Can I just comment on that? You were asking about sewage, you were asking about sewage, and you said that there's no objection. Is it worth making the point that the Scottish Water are a statutory consultee, and no objection means is actually a response? Is that the case?
Yes, Scottish Water have responded, and they've not treated that as an issue.
Right, so it's not just no objection to proceeding, therefore we presume that acts as a response if there's no response. Okay, thanks very much. And I'll ask James Gilfield. That's a young one. This is the young one, isn't it? It's all you are. Thank you very much everyone for your time. An awful lot of discussion around this, and it's actually quite good. I mean, it's opened my eyes to see you guys all talk about this, so nothing really should sneak in. There's two areas I'm really focused on. One was the school, and it's been well covered. The only thing I would say is that as a developer contribution, costs never really come in at an actual estimate, so I would like to think that the cost went up for new classrooms. Would the developer increase their costs, or is it a fixed cost? Because we all know that in the last couple of years, we've tried some work done, and it's probably double the price when you get materials and all that stuff, so that's happened. The second one was the NHS. Now, when you go to the NHS for a response, they'll offer that and say issues. That's for Scotland, in Canada, right? I thought I'd take a different tack, and I contacted the practice manager at the Traffic Health Centre. I got a very nice response from him. He gave me all the positives, he gave me a few negatives. It kind of put my mind at ease, because being in Alva, I tended to have a bit of a negative kind of view of the health centre. You'd phone up, you get through after half an hour, you get an appointment for 4 weeks, and you'd be better by then, you know. So, but it's changing. People are phoning up on the Monday and I get an appointment a wee bit quicker. Is it okay if I go over some of the points that I got from? It's from Stephen Edgeworth, who's the practice manager. I leave a copy of it, but obviously if you're going to properly edit these slides, you probably want to check with some of these to go to the okay, the first one, he said, we feel that the system will be able to cope with an influx of patients, and if we are anticipating significant exponential increase, we would recruit to that effect. There'll be things I mentioned later, because I need to as usual. The practice has a development plan. We know that the list size is going to grow naturally, and we'll monitor that by way of recruitment. As mentioned, he mentioned how they've invested heavily in the advanced nurse practitioner team, and that has improved over the last year or so. The practice is now a training practice, so they get doctors in that are in training. And what he says is that means that if they need to, they can actually recruit these guys. So, and because Alva is an attractive practice, as he calls it, people would like to work with it. I'm not talking about costs yet. He gave me 3 or 4 negatives. Continuity of care would be one of the negatives. But I'm throwing up, I like the same doctor because he remembers me. That kind of worked out a wee bit. I was happy to get any doctor to be honest, but so that is a window. The building is almost at capacity, as is Tilbury Health Centre. They've got 2 health centres that can go between them. So what he said was we may need investment in the building to sustain future growth and development. That might be something that the developer could maybe help with. Car parking at both health centres is a significant issue. I don't think I'll ever solve that because you would reduce the car park if you were to expand the building anyway. And the waiting room is often a standing room only, and there's no scope to increase the size of that. And on the final note, what he said was the financial envelope is finite. He said that the funding for the practice was cut by about 33% over the last year or two. There's sort of mystery in here. He says we're fortunate we're able to recruit, however we cannot recruit an endless supply of staff to fulfil every want from the population. So, as a sort of summary, it's a lot more positive than I'd like to believe. I believe in Alva, anyone else in Alva knows some of the issues here. So, the report does state, the original report does say there was no response, but as I say, contact and I'll be able to get that information. And that's probably all I want to say. You've covered all the other things in the cover, which is right next to the area. And you do sometimes see the swans or the geese coming out for the big pond that generates every so often. But that's possible. Do you want a copy of that information?
Leave it behind
Leave it there. It's just working the difficult getting the NHS to respond. I don't need a response here, do it's more just a motivation.
I can take comment. The other contribution towards education, if Parliament was granted and that was in place, that would be appropriately indexed. Okay. As far as in the NHS points, there's a formal procedure where the planning authority contact the NHS, and the planning authority, all planning authorities have dialogue with the NHS. I appreciate your comments about the local, but the local feeds into the central with the NHS, and it's the central we contact. So we expect that the central know that the finances and the situation of the local practices, and if we have to accept that if the NHS thought there'd be an impact on that and a developer contribution could help alleviate that, because it advise us that a contribution would be appropriate and we pursue that, but no contribution would be advised.
What it did say in the practice was that they have not been approached for any direct comment with regards to this, so it probably shows it didn't go out to them.
It would be for the person who's our contactee there to contact their local practices if they thought they needed feedback in order to respond to us. As I said, there's been no feedback from them, and no developer contributions being written.
I'm going to invite Andrew Tennant to comment on that.
Thanks, Mr. Yeah, well, first, thanks very much, Mr. Gilmore, for taking the time to raise this with us, and frankly, for going direct to the source, which we'll hear all that in terms of flooding today, but obviously with the NHS that's been particularly relevant. I think in the planning service we'll consider your comments today in respect of how we consult with the NHS. I mean, I don't want to say too much. It's clearly a concern of members. It's a concern of the service that we're not getting responses to consultations, and that's something that we want. That's something we have been seeking to address, and will continue to. So I think you've given us some food for thought in respect of how we consult. David's correct, absolutely correct in terms of the source we had to go to. I think there are some things already going on in my mind about how we could possibly augment that with other consultation approaches. So thanks for your time today. Appreciate it.
Yeah, well, we can't actually take those comments directly into our deliberations. It might be useful if you've got your man at the right to push up line, and then maybe the people we're trying to speak to might come along. Thank you very much. Thank you. Mr. John Cunningham.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me to address the committee. Thank you also for putting in the comfort break. Most welcome. Getting back in was difficult. Right, tell me how to work this thing. Stone and low. Thank you. And I, first of all, put in cover. Can I ask the chair if there are any fire alarm tests scheduled for today? And can you confirm that this is the only fire exit?
I will ask the appropriate authority. Are there any fire alarms scheduled for today? No, there are not.
Thank you.
It goes off our own. Do so. With the right.
And there's not a lot to add to the comments that I've actually made because they've been reiterated really by a couple of councillors in Street Corner and a few of them coming from Mr. Patterson. I have got a lot of comments and questions arising from the report itself. There are one or two major errors, but I'm not allowed to address this, so I'll stick with the comments I've actually made. My main, and if I'm honest, personal concern is the flooding. If the proposal was to be approved as is, the risk of my house flooding, I would reckon, goes up by double, at least 50%. 2 or 3 days of rain produce water in the field in the north parcel that seeps through to the garages in the back of the garden. If we get the really bad weather followed by snow, the snow melt, the water really does go to the back garden and Councillor Dennis is water. Referring to that and the flooding, it's disappointing to note that the developer has drawings with you at the present time where the finished floor levels on the proposed houses are lower than the levels recommended by the developer's own the report prepared by one of their experts. That itself is fun. The business of the open channel through the northern section, and generally that's not affected by the plan, but it's affected by the runoff from the hills on the other side of the Black Road. If that channel is opened up, the existing drains that are there are irrelevant, and given the time that they've been in, most of them will be silted up and non-functioning and probably contributing to the puddle that does materialise after a couple of days rain. I think somebody said that even after some dry weather, most of those water coming through. If the channel is to provide extra storage to the extent that the applicant has suggested, the channel would need to be full at the north-west corner. And if the channel is full at the north-west corner, given that water tends to go to its level, the A91 under the current proposals would be about 1.5 to 2 metres under water. So I think the storage suggestion to be offered is a bit misleading. As I say, my main concern is for the maximum personal level because it would affect my property. As far as the development is concerned, if it was able to be approved with the flooding problem removed, I think it would be quite good for our. Having said that, I'm not going to say the claims, I'll say that the applicants are willing to the possibility that there will be no great effect on the infrastructure of our road. You don't suddenly, produce 250 houses with other people involved, and it has no effect. Quite clearly, that's when I identified with education chaps who are asking for money for expanding the classroom at the primary school by removing the library. And although some of these are written, it's not quite right, or I know I don't propose to pay for the last piece of the meters. I think my calculator. The school itself, to my mind, just doesn't have the square footage available to add nursery capacity. The major thing with education is that I have difficulty understanding why a contribution is not being asked for towards secondary education. I can quite understand it physically, there's capacity to do it up to, I don't know, another 50 or 100 or 150. There are pupils physically into the infrastructure, but then the education department is going to have to find money. And then you're going to have to find money to pay for the support services required, teachers. I don't understand why you're not asking for it when a substantially smaller development recently was granted planning permission with the condition and required a sum of money to be offered as consideration, and it was to be used for secondary education. I find that quite strange. And as I say, there's a lot of things in the report that cannot address, but I've listened to them to a substantial email and sent that to the appropriate ministers. They'll actually come back and educate them. As I say, other things I'd like to speak about, not in my comments, so I can't speak. Part 1 possible, the traffic assessment. I found the traffic assessment to be misleading. The developments that have been used to do the comparisons don't relate to this development in any shape or form in general. There are only 2 that have development sizes commensurate with the one we're speaking of, but the populations in those places are 20 times. There are only 2 those samples actually in Scotland, Inverness and Lincoln, where the units that we use for comparison are over 60 houses, and the populations of I'm not convinced that the comparisons are right. I'm not convinced that the changes in TA in relation to the waiting times on the roundabout are commensurate with the changes that have happened. You have half the number of there's only just the roundabout on North Munster, and the waiting time for the roundabout is 17, but yeah, continue to 5 or 6%. The transport assessment should be much closer, stands much closer to investigation.
Thank you, and maybe the officers come back on those if they wish to do so, but thanks for your contribution.
Thank you, sir.
Having IT follow the bullet and someone locked out.
We'll get you back.
We all right? Sorry, Keith, go ahead.
Probably still think. I take Mr. Pennock's point about an impact on the town, more people will be preserved, but at the same token, more people just support local businesses and using it's a balance. And as far as comments about the water course and the PA, I'm sure if you have any comments on that.
I wouldn't go over more of the flood risk because of the discussion. I think much more to say the rules of this position of the flood risk is report. TA saying that TA is largely there to inform what access arrangements can safely be installed to support the development, and the provision of a roundabout is a significant piece of infrastructure which will substantially improve the access arrangements for Alva generally because it access it has a significant slow of traffic. There will be a complete change in the environment along the frontage should the development be approved. The design of the roundabout was the subject of significant back and forth between my section and the agents to get it properly positioned and properly designed, accommodating the likely queue lengths and giveaways. Clearly from the Main Street side, that's where it's important because you're coming over the bit of the hill, so there needs to be a sufficient distance of visibility in order that you can see the last vehicle. All subject to very detailed debate and discussion between yourselves and the agents. So the proposals are subject to roads construction consent, which we will issue as well, and that will have a separate safety report, which or analysis sheet that should be done from start to fit positive access and start.
I think our final objector is Gary Walker, who is online. Gary, can you switch?
Yes, can you hear me? Good stuff. First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to appear. Apologies for not being able to attend in person. I just really wanted to kind of underline some of my written submissions as an objector to the development. And I'm going to focus on my principal concern, which I think you've heard quite a bit about today. It's the flood risk issue in particular. As a resident of Cleuch Drive, which directly is adjacent to the kind of proposed development, particularly the northern part of the land, I'm familiar with the development site and the neighbourhood in and around Cleuch Drive. I am particularly concerned and have been for a number of years about how the area copes with intense rainfall and the propensity for surface water flooding in the area. And I know that some of the properties that neighbour that field do experience flooding from that field. So just a couple of kind of key points. And again, this is underlining my written submission that I've made already. This area is identified in SEPA's long-term flood risk maps as a high-risk area in terms of surface water flooding in particular. And as I've said, my experience is that particularly the lower southeast portion of the northern part of the land does not cope well with flooding. Whether that's down to groundwater levels on the site, a lack of infiltration capacity in the soils, or water ingress from the hills and other parts surrounding that field, I'm not entirely sure, but I don't think that's clear from the studies that have been undertaken so far in support of this application. Cleuch Drive is a particular concern. It's where I live. It's a low-lying area relative to the development site. So that puts it at, I guess, additional risk of surface water flooding and water moving from the development site into Cleuch Drive and into that area. I'm not convinced, as I've said, that the applicants work to understand the flood risk associated with the proposed development is adequate enough. For example, Snapshot groundwater surveys, rather than an understanding of the long-term and seasonal changes in groundwater levels, and developing a longer-term understanding of the site, I think would be the right way to go about this. A couple of key points: building on that northern parcel of land will reduce the ability for rainwater to infiltrate into the soil on the bits where the houses are built. And that will generate potentially more surface water uphill of existing residential properties. As I've said, the groundwater levels on the site are not really well understood, nor is the infiltration capacity on the site. The water regularly ponds on the surface in the lower portion of the field, directly adjacent to those existing residential properties in Cleuch Drive. So any increase in the amount of water being directed to that lower portion of the field is, I fear, going to increase the flood risk for those existing properties. The culverting daylighting plan, I am concerned that will increase the risk. I know it's well intentioned. It's much better than culverting water in terms of ecology and habitat, but I think the submissions from the developer also show that it vastly increases the holding capacity relative to the existing culvert. So potentially you've got more surface water coming down into that lower part of the field, and more holding capacity, yes, but there's a pinch point at the bottom end. This open channel will run into the existing culvert next to the main road, and it's my concern is that could be a pinch point. So if you've got more volume in the surface channel and it reaches that pinch point, the culvert only has a fixed capacity. That could be a pinch point for surface water, causing it to back up and create even more problems in that bottom portion of the field. Those, I think, are my main points. I support the officer's recommendation in the report, and really wanted to get behind that and just make my points at this committee hearing. So thanks again for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Your concerns about flooding just go as underlines to considerable concern we've heard from other people. Fine. Finally, the applicants and person, Mr. Sam Sweeney of Gracewell, to come up. I think there'll be no surprise to you. The focus will be on flooding. In any question that you're going to get.
Thank you, Convener, and members for allowing us to listen closely to the comments that have been made in discussion that we've had in relation to the report. I'm in agreement with the statement you made yourself, Convener, that in relation to layout design, placement, landscaping, and biodiversity, the officers have agreed that the proposals are according with policy. So there appear to be four principal reasons given for refusal, and these are development within a functional floodplain, geology in the culvert, rainwater issues, and development within the countryside. However, the report fails to take cognizance of some points that I'd like to run over. In relation to development within the functional floodplain, the flood risk assessment that was submitted to support application shows no proposed development within the functional floodplain as assessed by a detailed analysis of the topography of the land and the surrounding area. SEPA's flood map relied on LiDAR information, which is a high level assessment rather than a detailed assessment. SEPA's assumption on floodplain relates to their standing objection, holding objection relates to the removal of the existing track, which is a core path on the west side of the lower half of the site. The access track to the west that I just referred to, which seems to be one of the principal issues in relation to flooding the lower half of the site, or the southern half of the site, south of the A91. In relation to that, SEPA has said in their response that if confirmation could be provided that works could be done to make the path and road a permanent feature with robust defences, and if that were to be adopted, then they would reconsider their position. But clearly they are identifying that as currently being an informal flood defence. And in fact, if you look at the SEPA maps, the planning officer referred in his oral report there to there being no impact, current or existing impact on Craighorn Road development to the east of the site. In fact, the SEPA flood map, making the assumption that the track would be removed, would extend the floodplain into Craighorn Road. So to say that it is inappropriate to assess a development with an existing track that's been there for 18 years plus and is currently a core path which would require legal and planning processes to remove. To say that we have to remove that and demonstrate what happens in the event that's removed after the development has been built seems at odds with logic. The works that the applicant proposed to the track as part of the planning application were to resurface the track by lighting and facilitate the enablement of potential adoption of that in the future. But as previously been stated, they also offered the option of a separate certified agreement to have the track maintained in perpetuity. And I hear the concerns that have been raised in relation to future maintenance of that, long-term maintenance of that. But as it stands at the moment, if that track is removed, then there will be an impact on Craighorn track, so someone has to maintain it. There is nobody bound legally in any way whatsoever to maintain that at the moment. With the development through that becomes legally maintained in perpetuity, or it becomes adopted. So there is betterment there if the development goes ahead. In relation to daylighting the existing culvert, daylighting the culvert is wholly within SEPA's current policy, and SEPA have not objected to the daylighting of the culvert. There's been reference to capacity and additional capacity in relation to that culvert. The issue of the culvert as it exists again pre-development is that the culvert doesn't take, has not adequate capacity to take the water from the hill at the moment that enters it in the north-west corner, and therefore there is overland flow coming from the hill that finds its way into the south-east corner and generates the flood that the contributors today have identified in terms of neighbouring properties. And we acknowledge that. And the principle of daylighting the culvert was to facilitate or mitigate against the current issue in terms of the capacity of that culvert to take the flow from there. So we would effectively be accepting the greater flow from the hill rather than becoming just an overland flow issue, and directing that to adequate facilities in the southeast corner, and then draining from the southeast corner, beneath the A91, and eventually down to the river. In relation to groundwater issues,
we were actually rather late in the application process to carry out an assessment of groundwater or perceived groundwater issues, and we found it difficult to find any experts in this field. We did, however, find experts with some 30 years experience in this field and a renowned company from Durham who have carried out advisory professional work within Scotland as well. And they advised on the scope of that exercise. They carried out the work and they prepared a report, and that report they stated that there was recognised elevated groundwater levels existing on the site. But post-development, due to the work that we carried out as part of the development, not only the couple of drains that Stuart referred to earlier, but as the natural part of the development in terms of trenching and draining and sewers and the like, that there would in fact be betterment post-development in relation to existing properties to the east. We weren't made aware after submitting that, we weren't made aware of the concerns other than by the report. The report saying that we don't accept that. I'm not sure who has assessed or peer reviewed that report, but we're relying on expert opinion as we were asked to provide that. In relation to the element of development of the countryside, the reason for objection. The development in the countryside, just for clarification, the development we're talking about is simply the grass dry basin that will be there and will provide attenuation and capacity in the event of storm conditions. It is not a built feature in terms of something coming out of the ground. We were asked, we acknowledged that it's out with the development of the allocated land, but it's out with the allocated land because the allocated land is allocated for 430 units at the moment. The developer is proposing 244, that's a loss of 186 units, 46 or 47 affordable homes. So to mitigate that loss, we sought to put the detention basin out of the site, and in response to concern raised by the officers, we had prepared landscaping proposals for the surrounding area of the basin, and also thereafter, again, concern raised about biodiversity betterment, and we had prepared by the same landscaping consultants a statement in relation to the biodiversity betterment that we had. We are talking about what we refer to as the green belt, and what we're talking about is effectively an agricultural field. It's not woodland, it's not many, it's an agricultural field. What we're doing is with this whole portion of that field, putting a grass basin, it's going to be in a landscape setting with, biodiverse plants and vegetation like that. So, I feel, yes, we are out with the allocated land, but it's not essentially built development. We aren't doing housing with the allocated land. In reference to the building within a Hubbleston floodplain, again, go back just to clarify that is questionable, particularly in the north side. And Stuart mentioned that we were developing the functional floodplain. In reference to both the SEPA map and our own consultants' detailed assessment of that, I don't think we have any property within the functional floodplain on the north side of the site at all. On the south side of the site, below the A1, the issue there is the debate on what is the functional floodplain. The functional floodplain there only becomes functional floodplain if the track is removed. And our proposal is to not remove the track, but to reinforce the track and have it maintained either under Section 75 or by adoption by the Council. In relation to some of the points that have been raised by objectors as well, I'd just like to say that the question of there being no existing or no survey of existing culvert, we know where the culvert enters the site, we know where the culvert leaves the site, connects to the pipe below A91. It would be unusual for it not to pretty much go in a straight line, other than slight deviation because from across the rock or something when we were building it many years ago. So there wasn't felt to be a specific need. I don't think we had any formal request to carry into the survey of that. But there is an assumption here that is that it is close to the development, even if there was a the facility to accommodate it within reason. The relationship in terms of wheelchair access to the north, that's something that we would certainly have to look at in detail to ensure that's the case. We have to do that in any case when it gets to building control applications. In relation to there having been no advance in information from the previous application that was withdrawn, that application was withdrawn because we were effectively invited to withdraw that application and to reconsider. And the application was withdrawn, we reconsidered, the number of units and the location of the build of these units was reduced, so that there is less developable area within the site. And there was far more detailed surveys and assessments carried out in relation to the potential flooding. So, we have done what we could there. The only thing that hasn't been done or carried out that has been raised today is the omitting the track, effectively assuming that the track gets taken away. They don't know who's going to take the track away. If it's consented under Section 75 or even if it's not, who's going to take that track away, even if there is questions why we take it away. But we could take that away, but not take away the existing track on the south side of the site. Because the flood water comes at one end, it's going to be held with that track, and it will inevitably go along and impact on Take On Road. But why not take away both tracks? If we take away one, we need to take away the other, and the flood water then wouldn't go east, but it would head to the Devon. So we just don't see a logical argument there at all. As I said already, SEPA have intimated their view that they would review their position if they could be convinced that that track was going to be maintained in perpetuity. We appreciate that there is a process to be had at the Council of Government to look at forward for flood defence, but we'll be willing to work with the Council as far as that's concerned, if that was their preference. I think I've pretty much covered the points that I've heard and the point that I've seen in the report. I think the only thing I'd like to add is that the consequences of refusing the current proposal, which we feel is a viable proposal, would be the likelihood of appeal scenario again, and the result of that appeal being dismissed by the court for whatever reason is likely to then render the allocated site ineffective. If that's rendered ineffective, then I think there's a likelihood of some people breaking against for costs associated with being invited to submit an application on an allocated site that is ineffective for so unwilling to accept maintenance of an existing sort of infrastructure there in relation to that whole path and that track. All I have to say at the moment to you and have to answer questions. Thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mrs. Reedy, for that very clear enunciation. And I think that demands an answer in terms of matters of fact. And what is the member who wishes to comment?
Thank you, Chris. One or two things you mentioned that the rainwater was raised late in the process. I don't want to cover that, and I'm happy to look back through to detail out the trail when that was raised. I know it's only some vegetation to that road. The council was raised it earlier, and I said that can be dealt with by condition should permission be approved. It's not my understanding that people are seeking the physical removal of the tracks. My understanding that they just want that taken out of the modelling in order to establish the extent of the functional floodplain, because people don't accept that barrier company would be guaranteed to function. So, but any other issues raised in terms of the flooding, I think perhaps it was quite detailed, and I think that you could maybe answer that better than I should.
Okay, that's all right. The status of groundwater issues concern we have Dave had asked me for comment on an information that I'm studying scholars of the environment and he put forward. Is that what you're referring to? So I'd made comment on that back to Dave, and I don't recall being asked to make any further comment on groundwater solutions. That was on the 8th of December 2022. So when he come back, I wasn't satisfied with what they were suggesting. I didn't think the straightforward cut-off drainage system around the city was detailed enough to the various concerns. And the other point you make was that our CPAR is actually responsibility, so they would need to be the ones who defend the position in terms of whether or not adequate modelling and mapping had been agreed, and I don't think that's the case, that they have agreed that the agents who conducted the mapping for the second purpose assessment was carried out, they are satisfied with that. One of the points being that they want to see any form of defense removed, as you say, in order that we can see what the functional floodplain actually does. So that's what the planning policy requires of be done, and then planning decisions are based on that recognition. Any maintenance that comes as a consequence of new development greenfield is, as a local flood officer, I have to have concern about it. You have to always be maintaining something, whether it's abundant, whether it's getting water under the area. You want to always make sure that happens so you can accommodate new development. My understanding is the planning policy for that, and I think that's critical maintenance work, and the council, in my opinion, should be taking any circumstances for this new development that is proposed.
Dave, sorry if I misled you in terms of what I was saying about SEPA. I haven't asked us to remove, particularly remove the track. They've asked us to model the site, although that existing 80-year-old track is not big, and therefore demonstrate what would happen in the event of that track being removed to sometime in the future after the development being built, that track to be removed. Our position is why nobody ever mentioned the track. There is the council condition of the track that came there to the age, and that was the undertaking. In relation to the groundwater, to clarify, no, it isn't. Your point is not in relation to the information provided by each other by the centre of last year, but over the more recent detailed study carried out by the GRI and Durham. We found the communicate in this field. They have 30 years experience in working with it, and they did direct detailed assessment of their scope on it. Already there's a detailed report that was submitted, and thus we have in relation to the response policy. We haven't accepted it, we haven't accepted that we had assessed it properly. Therefore, there was understanding that we thought we were referring to the details of the mission as opposed to something that was last year.
Any further comments, Austin?
understand again that land policy will allow you to create a new flood defence that the council subsequently adopts in order to protect new development. I understand land policy doesn't apply, it argues against that position. But once you just create a flood wall and then you can put any housing, that's not understanding is incorrect.
So answer again, mind. We are not proposing a new flood defence be constructed or put in place. There's an existing flood defence here, Holgate Farm, that has been there for 80 odd years. We are simply looking to ensure that is maintained, and that's all we're asking for.
Right, well, the issue on that seems to be whether it's possible for the council to accept perpetual liability. I don't know if it is possible or not. That seems to be what is acute here, because there's no other mechanism that I can think of how you would guarantee the opportunity to maintain it. You need to establish a public body of some sort, including only the council. I don't know whether the council can undertake those kind of obligations. Perhaps only in writing, and that's the way. Sure.
It's the same point about kind of flood defence, whether it's formal or informal. Formal flood defences are properly registered at a national level, and this is a very, very small, would be considered informal flood defence that happens to have a benefit to a new development on the greenfield site. I think SEPA's position is that that's not an adequate solution. You can't rely on whatever form you take, whether it be an agricultural environment, whether it be a flood, it's informal, not owned and operated by the local authority, then it should be relied on as a means to protect against flooding for new development. So that, I think that's important to take into account. It's not a formal flood defence, it's an informal flood defence that owns. I'm not sure who actually owns the track. I think maybe Marshall, perhaps. But I know there was work recently done to that sort of track to lift its level by some 12 inches by road clearing. And whether that's to do with the development or not, or to do with I'm not sure. But to me, it appeared as if that was trying to reinforce and re-establish the southern track and its purpose in relation to this application. But I can't say that for sure.
Yeah, again, we're talking here about something that is already a core path identified as a path within the core path network, as far as I'm aware. And there are other developments where we are looking at the routes of core path north. And I know the difficulty in terms of the legal process and planning process to achieve that outcome in terms of moving them, taking them slightly close to moving the track. So, I just want to reinforce the fact that this will be going to be able to move the track. Secondly, the issue is that if there is no development here, then effectively there is still flooding in existing houses, regardless of whether the development happens. But if we assume that the track is removed, as people are suggesting, then the site that will be managed effectively. And CPOP and other projects are actually suggesting that we remove material from the flood. The area is maintained, suggesting there is no logic to their approach to this.
Okay, final comment on that, and we will get to questions.
Thank you. I think this is an open situation, and well, not unique, I should say, but essentially we have a position here where the advice provided by SEPA has been provided on a technical basis. And I don't think, frankly, this is a forum to debate the merits or otherwise of SEPA's response to this statutory concept. We have the response. What we as a planning authority, in terms of Stuart's rules, in terms of council's flooding responsibilities, is an obligation to assess the information that we have in respect to the application in taking recognised of the comments from our statutory consultees. So I think essentially we're at a position where we, as a planning authority, don't have the confidence of being able to recommend favourably on a site, which should be made clear through this meeting that in most other respects it complies with the development plan policy. So I think the issue here is one, as I say, of a technical assessment and a comparison of that technical information. Now, the reason this application is at committee is, and this point is only made for as a matter of fact, is that in continuing to seek further information from the applicant, it was made clear that no further information would be submitted and the applicant would not extend the period for determination of the application, thereby affording the opportunity to appeal a non-determination of the application to Scottish ministers. So on that basis, the Planning Service has brought together a recommendation on the basis of all information available to it at the moment and presented that recommendation to committee. I think it's important to give a bit of clarification as to why we're here today on the basis of information to consider.
Right, members, any questions?
Alan references to made just moments ago about another report that's come through. Have you seen that report?
Thanks, Commissioner. I would need to ask David, as a case officer, to comment.
Okay, yes, I'm concerned that Stuart's not seen that report, and I think it's appropriate that Stuart should see that report, so that's something I would need to check.
If you're being asked to make a decision today, normally these decisions are made with the information before us. Now here we have additional information that may or may not exist. And we're still going to have to make a decision. So I don't feel comfortable making a decision today based on the fact that additional information should be looked forward.
Anyone respond to that?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think we need some clarification on this one. I think that's quite clear. I think what members would have to consider is, as Councillor Bell has noted here, is whether members are comfortable making a decision. Clearly, there are options available to members in terms of that. One is to look at the ability, and otherwise, to make a decision today and whether or not to consider the application today. The second is, of course, is to look at a particular reason for refusal that relates to that matter of concern and whether or not that continues to be a reason for refusal. Sorry, just to point out that's a reason to groundwater. Just for clarification.
Thanks, Chair. I understand that what's been suggested is almost like a viewpoint that if these tracks were removed, what would be the circumstances of flooding in that area. So we're getting sort of almost doing a virtual exercise here. There's no tracks, so therefore there's no barrier, so therefore where would this water go? And that's what SEPA's asked. So taking account of the fact that we don't seem to have ownership of these tracks, and certainly I would not agree that the council should assume a liability to retain these tracks in perpetuity forevermore when the council don't stand to gain anything from this. That would be an ongoing financial obligation on the council. It has to be raised that, in your opinion, should these tracks be breached for whatever reason in some fashion in the future, and that allowed water in there that otherwise wouldn't be there if the tracks were there, and I think that's what SEPA's kind of getting at. How would you expect people who have bought homes on these areas, how would you expect them to feel flood, if water comes flooding into these properties, and you go back and say, oh, well, kind of thought it was all right, if there was all these footpaths for there. And albeit it might be a footpath, but we've got hundreds of footpaths in Cutlanshire. It doesn't mean that we're going to have water running through them and houses built next to them. So that would be one point that I feel SEPA are obviously kind of trying to future-proof this development, if you like, by asking you to imagine these parts on the lake. Not just basically answering the question, you feel that you thought it was an exercise that had no purpose, happy but does have a purpose. The second point that I'd like to make is, you mentioned at the very end of your summation there, that there may well be a financial penalty on the council for accepting your, well, I'm sorry, but that's how I felt you had sort of framed it. There might be a financial penalty on the council. Should we refuse this application and then it results in the developer having a financial loss? And that was how I heard it. I don't know how everybody else felt, but that's how I heard it. Well, I would have to sort of answer that by asking you, how else would the council know what your plans were unless they were to ask you to apply? We don't have a crystal ball. We don't know what your plans are. You submit an application that says these are a 50-story block, you know, and then we'll come back and say, I'm sorry, that's just out with the development plan. We can't claim that. But unless we accept the application, we're not going to know that. So I don't understand why obviously an application should result in a financial penalty to the council, because we don't know what your application is going to contain until we get it. So I just want to say
I
that.
have to be fair about this. Councillor Benny was asked a question. Could you direct it?
Yes, well, my question is, no, my original question was, how would we determine what the likelihood of that flood was going to be on that if we don't assume that at some point these tracks could be breached? The second question is, how would we know what you want to apply for until you actually apply to apply, which is why you get the invitation to apply? So, sorry, David. Thank you.
If I can answer the reverse order, in relation to the application, correct, I don't know what's going to be going forward until we apply, but the council allocated the land, the council knew the issues with the land when it was allocated, and they allocated the sites for development. So they were on the assumption that the track was there anyway, they were just hoping back floodwater, and therefore the allocation was approved. And it's that point of thinking that the developer has therefore come forward with proposals based on that allocation, and taking account of the constraints of the site and reducing the number. Council was 430 units, we were only, if it were approved, we would only be providing 244 units, so there was a significant reduction there. What I'm saying is if the council are saying, here is an allocated site, we want you to assume that the track is no longer there, and therefore the site floods, then why would the council allocate that site in the first instance? And that's the point I'm making in relation to council opening themselves to potential legal challenges in relation to that. That was solely the point. In relation to the SEPA question, you're perfectly correct. In the sense that they are saying, imagine the track wasn't there at all happened. Now, if we don't develop the site and we imagine the track isn't there, then the houses in Craig Farm Road will flood. So the track needs to be there to protect them even without development. And our argument therefore is that why would we want to take away the track? Why we should? And we have encapsulated that track within the red line, so it's part of the development. And therefore there is the ability for the council to conditioning consent in relation to maintenance of perpetuity. You may not like potential risk of that if the council are not adopting it, in the sense that maintenance of the line may be neglected slightly, but it is still within the council's ability to enforce that maintenance in the future. And in respect of what the council will get out of it, I think there is nothing in it for the council. The council have identified 430 houses required within the Alba area in terms of the housing supply strategy. If the site is effective, then we will get the site based on the council moves out in the houses and moves out on the benefits to the community that was there.
Can I come back there?
Yeah, please do.
Because council have identified 430 houses as the next new that has been that site, so I mean that's a longer term vision. The other thing being the burden that these houses would place on that area between these two tracks changes the complexion of that completely. The two tracks could sit there in perpetuity and never be genuine. The fact that you put a burden, 200 north, 400 north, whatever number you want to place on that, onto that land does place a different complexion entirely on it than it would if nothing was ever touched. And it is, a floodplain is a floodplain is a floodplain. It's there for a reason, it's designated as a floodplain for a reason. We didn't just pick these names because, So a floodplain is a floodplain. So just want to clarify what my understanding was of that. Thanks.
Thanks, Chair. It's clear floodings driving a lot of our discussions today. Ultimately, that will have an impact on the design that's in front of us today. So this is a substantial add-on development to Alba. I'd just like to understand a little bit more about the design philosophy for the site. What I mean by that is that one of the tracks that we've been talking about is basically going to be the approach road to Alba. It's going to be the outer edge, the outer face of Alba, and yet we don't seem to have included any sort of gateway features or, I'd like to address that. We've also got across the whole of Alba, major surface water issues, and that will have implications, I would imagine, on the site there of the different houses that we're talking about. And then, of course, we get the big issue here about where the new development adjoins the old estate for existing housing, including Drive and Success Walk. So, and that's where you're talking about opening up a culvert. And what I'm kind of confused about is that we're looking at plans. One of our aspirations is to have 20 minutes neighbourage, which allows permeability for people to walk from the new housing development into Alba. Permeability also might transfer water in terms of hard footpath surfaces. And looking at the plans, there seems to be a bit of a conflict. Some have seen that north to south route have spur links going to the cul-de-sacs in Close Drive. Some of your plans show links and others don't. And I looked, and suddenly the southern part of the development, there's no links across into the housing area there, although you could create one along Sinclair's Walk, where there's a cul-de-sac along the way, but there's a fence garage site there, but there's no footpath link there, so that's along. So the design philosophy, are you keen to have that permeability, and why is that not achieved in some of the footpath networks you provided? And that outer edge face to Alba, what's your thinking how the wave plan will provide how that's designed? I want to learn a little bit more about that.
Yeah, Keith.
In terms of permeability, I take the point that there's no connection through to that garage court. But if you made a connection through there, you very quickly, because of the form of the street pattern beyond there to the east, you very quickly be rerouted back up to the A991. And I think it's appropriate that there's the footpath that goes along the southern edge of the existing housing and would go along the southern edge of the proposed housing. That's an acceptable footpath to access to the school, because that footpath extends all the way along to Brookfield Place and George Street. So I don't think that there'd be a lot of gain in forming an access through to that garage court, to be honest, because you very quickly be back to where you go. Anyway, in terms of the gateway, the original proposal showed, if you're coming into Alba, and the southern section of the site, the original proposal showed back gardens onto that, but we asked the applicant and the authorities, and they turned those houses around. And so these houses then would front onto the road, and that with the soft edge planting forms a much better gateway, if you like, approach into Alba rather than just back fencing. So it's not that hard dense anymore. There's houses in front of it, so you probably can't do it. So I think as far as the gateway goes, I think the applicant accommodated our comments there. But I take Sam's point about the local development plan allocating 430 houses, and if you can't build them, then you can't build the site. I don't concur with that. Development plans always indicate a very number that could maybe go on that site, given that site's that size, but the development plan is very detailed and.
Can I just, I'm sorry, can I just interrupt you? To be honest, this was a question to the developer rather than our planning officer acting as a representative and his interpretation of what the developer. So the question is really to the developer. I had a conflict in my mind that on some of your layout plans, I saw some footpath links going into the cul-de-sacs and Drive and run into St Serves. And there's the final version of the plan, it seems to avoid a lot of this, what I've called permeability. But to be honest, if I was in that development, I think I would, although you've left a way leave along the E91, which is landscape, I think I'd rather walk through to the shops in Alba, through some of the housing areas, than nest along the busy E91. That's personal preference, but I'm asking what is the ultimate design philosophy there? Do you want linkages or don't you? And is a flooding an issue in that in terms of the connectivity of providing hard surfaces into the low-lying areas of the existing Alba settlement? So,
firstly, apologies for the confusion between the drawings. They maybe just haven't meshed together properly. Initially, the proposal did have a greater degree of connectivity in the north portion of the site, the Cook Drive, but there were questions arose in relation to neighbour objections in relation to connectivity there. So we chose to remove the connectivity there. We have no objection to forming those in relation to how that may or may not affect flood. There would be no issue insofar as we'd be able to design the connections to not deliver flood water into Flood Drive, and also in the lower portion of the site into St Serves. The connection to St Serves was never shown, I don't think, because it wasn't what we perceived as being a topical connection, so it would be a path to nowhere, and then go through potentially private ground or third-party ground, which we would normally do unless the council are prepared to ensure that the connection comes from the other side to the boundary. But again, if that were the case, then we would have an issue with that either. We don't have an issue with the agree. when I visited that development, then yeah, I probably would prefer rather go down to the 91 to the cycle track, just wandering through the existing area in relation to the gateway. David Stone put my thunder there, and the adjustments we made from the areas and fronting the approach road from the west along the NG1. There's also the roundabout there, which is essentially a part of the gateway feature. But also, in the back of our mind is also the percentage up that we need to go to as part of a consent, and see that we would anticipate we would focus on that element as a gateway feature.
So the welcome to Alma sign, if you like, in your proposed development is under percentage for that. You can see that it's moving that feature.
Well, yeah, I imagine what we're going to at the moment would be some sort of gateway feature. Whether that gateway in itself is the app design, or whether there is also an app design part of that, artificial part of that, but yeah, it would be beneficial to the developer to have a nice entrance.
I mean, it's not our strategic plans, and I would fully acknowledge the debate we've had, that's just a TLC thing. But coming to the opening up of the culvert, which either there's an initial study or there's not, the opening up of the culvert, unless that's quantified, I don't understand how you can actually get a proper layout of the number of houses and things you would have on that site, without understanding the capacity and the road bearing aspects, particularly of surface water within the developments. Can you maybe address that?
We do understand the capacity and the overland flow and already submitted assessments of that for scrutiny. The issue is that there is a small bore culvert which runs through the site at the moment, and the northwest corner of that. There are water courses coming that are fed from surface water from the hillside that lead into that culvert, and that culvert essentially is a small bore pipe, and it doesn't take what's simply come off the site, off the hillside, and therefore it overflows and runs through the field, and that's what generates the existing flooding in the southeast corner, and that's what we want by transportation and by seaward could be the issue. The question is how we resolve that. Anything we do in terms of development itself, ignoring the daily building of it, building the development, whether the objective mentioned that we are generating more hard surface and therefore generating capture and more rainwater. For effective capturing, you then conduit that effectively out of the site, attenuate and conduit it out of the site, not anywhere near the culvert. We would be adding to almost in that culvert. So the development is, aside from the culvert question, we are not adding to that culvert. In terms of the culvert, what we are saying is there's an existing problem there. We may be able to alleviate that problem by de-lighting the culvert, and that is something that is entrenched in secret policy. We saw that on the east side of London, where they were pushing us to de-light the culvert there, and that we were unable to just because of the water. But we want to do that. We are content to do that to address an existing problem, not one that we are adding to it. And in doing that and de-lighting that culvert, we feel that it would assist in terms of the alleviation of the existing flood problem to the not hold.
I think I'd like to address that question to Stuart, just to gain my own understanding. I'm struggling a little bit with this. There are three sections. The top section above the A91, the middle section below the A91, and it's below that. The field that seems to flood, it's got all the signs flooding, is the middle section. Now it's a tank because it's got roads on three sides. It's got raised ground on three sides. surely that structure itself is causing a lot of problem. The weight of the roads, the formation of the roads, the traffic of the roads will compact the soil underneath. Okay, once it gets removed, that's probably fairly compact as well. So, what I don't understand why the simple solution is not to drain the middle section southwards towards the Devon. Would that not alleviate problems?
You mean, as things stand about the development, in association with the
Well, yeah, well, in order to facilitate the development, if that's the solution, you'd have to do that. But in principle, is that a fact that if you were to run, if you were to tunnel under the road that leads to the sewage works, which runs east-west, and allow the water from the middle field to drain into the bottom field, would that not find its way into the Devon?
So there's two main flood mechanisms. One is fluvial, which is river flooding, and one is pluvial, which is some sort of flooding. And the field at the bottom there is generally certainly pluvial, so water that just gathers and can't drain away, so it slows there. So the development is going to create a development platform on top of that, as you say. So the groundwater is water that's sitting in source. So where is that going to go? So for the report that Sam mentions, which I've not seen, is then you could have a look at that. I'm not very familiar with this, I've got to say, maybe other professionals on the rest of the council and the rest. That may, any mitigation measures that are proposed to accommodate the groundwater, the displacement of groundwater, require maintenance, and that falls foul of the planning policy in my understanding. In terms of the question you asked, yes, you could probably make arrangements to drain that land and take water elsewhere, but that needs maintenance as well. And who's going to absolutely guarantee that pipes in the ground? That would be a maintenance burden on the council or a third party to keep the area clear. But I don't see how I think the planning policy as it is for greenfield development, how that can doesn't fall for the planning policy. Sounds good.
It was a point that we raised partly through the planning process was whether we could potentially deliver the water together there at the moment down to the river. And Stuart was right that there's maintenance aspects to that. But that's precisely what we've done on the east side of Alba. We developed there where we put in the swales. So the terminology for effectively the dams and filters and directing what is the potential for water routes around the site southward. So we were thinking along the line, need it be pipe, could it be square? And square would need less maintenance than pipe or less onerous than maintenance.
So again, just to go back, the development, he said about they essentially act as passive means to store water, and it can be conveyed elsewhere without any need for maintenance. In this case, as far as I can gather, that ultimately water needs to go underneath the energy line and underneath, or perhaps over the top of the cycle route that's there. So whatever in order to put something below, you have to maintain it. It has to be a physical gap that's kept clear, and that's the maintenance issue. Passive is the way it needs to be, so that the ground is just shaped so that the flood water is stored and the actually can convey. I don't think that's possible. I've not seen any proposal to try and accommodate that.
Councillor
So I've got a map here of the boreholes that were done now. The borehole that's at the southeast, TP08, there's a house, there's a back garden, and then there's the biodiversity corridor. So there's not, and actually with the biodiversity corridor, there's no boreholes or anything being done up that area. Like your eyes can tell you that that area is the one that has a lot of surface water. So I think it's bizarre why the company never did any boreholes to assess the ground there. Because that, again, as I say, that water there then goes into the houses in the east. So that is, I just find that strange that there's been no boreholes there. And also in regards to the SUDs, I don't ever say a SUD system is a simple, you know, that land will get turned up, it'll take years for it to kind of go in, for it to have any kind of buying diversity buy-in, and yeah, I don't see I've never really heard of SUDs being a simple kind of thing to put in, so it was just kind of a question in regards to the SUDs as well, in the countryside.
In relation to the proposal, but I don't know which report you're looking at, and whether it's the most recent one or not, but in relation to the boreholes, there was no potential of, there was a risk of taking boreholes in that corridor, because that corridor is there because of existing infrastructure. So the second boreholes through there, the extension infrastructure. I suspect that's why they have to take the borehole as close to the existing development as we make. Like, in relation to the SUDs, as a practice, we were one of the first substations in Scotland, one of the first SUDs in Scotland in Brighton, and we've been moving the development since, and they can, if they're properly constructed and properly planted, they can become useful biodiverse benefits, they have a long lifespan, and such is normally the first thing to be developed within the site, so that we are ready to have a plan to call it that when first basis is inhabited, and therefore it would be planted in advance of the development.
So if you couldn't do boreholes there because of the existing infrastructure, does that not then emphasise why survey should have been done with that infrastructure? Because I think that's part of the reasons of what Stuart said, that we don't know what's actually happening underneath there in order to get that road.
Different bits of infrastructure here. So the south side, we pretty much know that we have a line ahead, and like that, yeah. By virtue of common ways for working areas, we are not supposed to enter the ways to carry out investigation work. It would be unusual for that to happen. There is generally, in relation to co-ops and like, there is a standoff where we don't want construction project and not like passing and carrying an investigation down that carries a significant risk.
Right, I think there are a number of questions, and we'll move to the proposal of the paper, and of course, the debate
Can I just check the most up-to-date report, is that the one that's on the 1st of March 2023?
I don't have the date to hand, but it's going to be date to hand before the clear planning OGI.
Yeah, that is.
You have to know that.
Right, as I was saying, well, I propose a paper for procedural purposes.
I'm happy to hold the second refusal of the application to outline the reasons. Just how do you want to do that?
Right, we're in a situation here, I feel, where we'll need to enter into the debate around that, as I'll throw the first paper on. There's a lot to recommend in the application in terms of benefits to the community. There's one major stumbling block. What is the truth of the flooding problem? And that's the bit I'm struggling to understand. Is there a solution to this, or is there not a solution to it? Is there more information that can be found? So I'm not sure, for one thing, that I have enough information in my head to make a decision on this. I don't know what the rest of the members do. I would like to canvass your opinion on that, and you feel we can decide this today on the information we have in front of us, or whether we need to seek a delay in making that decision. Anyone want to thank us? Oh, sorry, yeah, okay, I'll let Mr. Finlayson give you a bit of background information.
Thanks, Convener. Hopefully this will assist members in the deliberations of the convener's question. And this, what my witness is intended solely for that purpose. Essentially, the reason we're acting today, I've alluded to the terminology, but essentially we're acting today recommending refusal because the council has a statutory objection from SEPA, sorry, it's an objection SEPA as a statutory approach in respect to flooding. Getting back on the comments earlier on about the matters in hand and in front of the committee, I've viewed the reasons for refusal. I'm satisfied that reason number one, which relates to flooding, does not specifically refer to groundwater. It's, I think, the principal objection. The reason why we're acting is because of the objection to SEPA, which are not on groundwater issues, as the steward clarified. I think it's clear that if there is a report that hasn't been properly reviewed, we need to do that. I'm satisfied that that can be done post the decision to committee in advance of any subsequent appeal, and that matters can either be held or dismissed in advance of that appeal being considered by Scottish Government. So personally, my feeling is that committee have sufficient information to consider the paper fully today. However, I absolutely respect the committee's views potentially contrary to that, and I'm happy to answer any questions on the specific technical matters relating to any tensions you have in your considerations of these matters.
Question one from me just would be, what is the difference between, if we decided not to make a decision today and seek further information on the flooding issue, that's decision one. Decision two is to refuse the planning permission, allow it to appeal, and that information perhaps comes out during that process. What's the advantage in one route over the other?
Thanks. I don't think there is an advantage. It depends, of course, on your perspective. From the applicant's perspective to the council as a planning authority. I mean, it's notwithstanding the groundwater matters, which I think require further consideration. But I do feel that consideration can take place in advance of any potential deal, and it doesn't actually compromise what we have in respect of the recommendation here, which is, as I repeat my point, it's not specifically referred to groundwater and reasons for refusal. But I think that, of course, the benefits to members are that they feel fully appraised of all matters before coming to a decision. That's something that members have to consider. But again, if I could provide assurances that if members, based on the advice they've received today, determined to proceed with the recommendation in front of them, I could give comfort that those matters would receive consideration subsequently should any appeals.
Thanks for that. Donald.
Thanks, Chair, because I was going to sum up for the recommendation for refusal. I think we've got no option but adopt what I call a precautionary principle here. We've had SEPA statutory indicator, statutory advisor put in an objection, or it could be judged as a holding objection, but they clearly raised a lot of technical issues in relation to flooding. I'm not an hydrologist, I don't have a claim to be an hydrologist, but I do know the evidence of more. I stay locally in Avon State, a few streets along from that. I know the area has a high water table. I know that there's constant instances at the moment of flooding, particularly in Close Drive, which is New Line, but that can also be said of the council housing, former council housing area along St Serves. I believe this bill is slightly higher. Although there's a proposed old cobbler area, and I'm still would be seriously worried about water being retained there and flowing into the neighbouring housing areas. I've also indicated, which is clearly a slight philosophical difference, but if I was looking at this area, I would like to see footpaths going into the surrounding area. I think that's what our 20-minute neighbourhood is all about. I recognise, according to the developer, they received representations that people wouldn't want folk moving through, but I personally think if we're to achieve 20-minute neighbourhoods, we've got to have as many paths as we have. I like within the layout plan that we have got a pedestrian route that goes from north to south. Hopefully that will be wide enough to be a cycle route if this develops ever to come to place or come to pass. The fundamental issue is the flooding, and the officers have provided the basis for refusal there, and I support that recommendation.
Okay, Councillor Kerr.
Thanks, it's once a question that's probably been answered when we've gone on with the Senate, which was around the option not to take a decision to defer it. I'm not quite sure for me what it was we were going to defer it for, what was information we made to still go back and who we were going to get it from. And it was actually from Hull and Sarah, I think back to where it was originally this, which is quite clear that in terms of the secret issue, this paper, I'm in a position seems to talk about. We go with the officer's recommendation and object at this stage, recognising that there are still stages of information to come forward to change something. As it stands at the moment, I'm content with the recommendation.
Councillor Knight.
Thanks, Chair. I personally feel that I've got enough information to come to a decision today. I think if we got the report on the rainwater, I think it would actually probably just confirm what I already think, because I don't see how the report on the rainwaters going to improve the situation. I think if anything it might worsen the situation. And I think there are enough factors being discovered and debated today to allow me to form an opinion. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Benn.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I tend to agree with Jane here. We've heard all different types of ways and means, but at the end of the day, we haven't had any affirmative discussion on what happens with water. But it's not just the water, it's also the education side and the actual fact of Alba would change quite dramatically because it would be much bigger and much longer area as well, which can be a good thing, it can also be bad. So yeah, I've got enough information to make a decision as well. Thank you. I'd just like to say, I'm not opposed to housing being built here. I think Alba does need additional houses, and that's got nothing to do with this. And I think that, with the information that we have from CEPA, obviously the information from Stuart, I don't think the current planning plan is right. We need to safeguard the residents and the land that's there currently, and we need to do it for the houses that could be built. So we need to make sure that they are safe, because water is a big issue and it's going to get a bigger issue. So I think the statements that have been made are valid.
Okay.
No, I agree with much what you said, but other councillors, I mean, there's a lot potentially positive things about the development, and it's nice to see, like, for example, the heat pumps and the solar panels, and I'm very pleased to see that, but, I've heard the concerns of residents or objectors, and, understand CEPA's objections, and I just don't think there's any way we can get past that today. There's been no proposals that to get around it that I'm convinced of. So for that reason, I think we have enough information. I don't think standing water will make any difference. In my mind, I've got enough information to make a decision today. And I'm very confident in that sort of based on the information we have.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Yeah. I'll be an easy one. When I come into this today, I have an idea of my thought processes. Then they get additional information thrown into the mix, which kind of threw me. Like the other councillors have said there, I'm totally supportive of any development to increase the number of houses, the number of available houses to people. Why would you vote against it? However, we do have this flooding issue. I have, from memory certainly, there was pictures of sheep being rescued by the tourists because of the flooding in Alva. I don't want to see that again. Alan, when you mentioned there that if a decision goes against this and is appealed, then the contents of the report that has come to light can be discussed at that time, and that has swung me the other way. Only that and that alone is what swung me. Because ordinarily, I would look at the papers that we have presented in front of us to make a decision. The real ones would actually mean we could consider the deferment. However, with Alan's new information, that's convincing. So I'm going to support the officer's recommendation.
Right. Everyone's had their say, I think. You're ready to vote on the issue. Anyone minded to oppose the paper? Carried unanimous. Thank you all very much for your attendance today. It was longer than we planned, but it was a difficult one.